The world celebrated Clara's engagement. To be wed to Theodore Hawthorne meant financial security for her family and social standing that shone brighter than gold. But Clara's heart yearned for something else, something forbidden. When Evelyn Hart, a young governess with a soft demeanor and eyes that seemed to hold entire constellations, arrived at the manor, life began to shift in quiet, unexpected ways. Evelyn had been hired to tutor Clara's younger cousins, but her presence extended beyond the classroom. She moved with a grace that spoke of wild freedom, carried kindness in her words, and had a strength beneath her gentleness that Clara could not ignore. At first, their connection was subtle shared glances across the drawing room, conversations that lingered till long after lessons, laughter tucked away in corners of the garden where no one could hear. Then came the evenings spent by the fireplace in the music room, where classical melodies intertwined with unspoken emotions. Clara would play, her fingers dancing over the ivory keys while her eyes searched Evelyn's face, finding solace in the depths of those pools which mirrored back her own longings. In those moments, the grand halls and watchful eyes of the manor faded away. There was just the music, the firelight, and the unspoken promise of two souls recognizing each other in the darkness. One evening, as twilight painted the manor's gardens in soft hues of violet and gold, Clara and Evelyn found themselves alone. The air was filled with the scent of roses, and the soft chirping of crickets seemed to echo the unspoken tension between them. "You always look at the stars," Clara said softly, noticing how Evelyn's gaze lingered on the horizon. "They remind me there's more to life than duty and expectation," Evelyn replied, her voice calm but carrying a truth that struck deep within Clara. Clara hesitated, then whispered, "Sometimes I feel as though I'm trapped in a cage made of gold. Beautiful, yes, but still a cage." Evelyn's eyes softened. "Even birds in cages dream of flying, Clara." It was in that moment that Clara felt the walls around her heart begin to crumble. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them deepened. They shared books by the fire, their fingers brushing as they turned the pages. They walked the gardens, speaking of dreams they could never voice aloud to others. For Evelyn, it was the dream of living freely, unbound by society's expectations. For Clara, it was the simple dream of being loved not as an heiress, not as a symbol, but as herself. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the manor, Clara sat in the music room, her fingers idly tracing the edges of the piano keys. A melody she had played countless times before suddenly resonated with a depth of feeling she had never known it possessed. She rose, her heart pounding, and crossed the hall to Evelyn's room. A gentle knock, a whispered invitation, and soon they were lost in the music, in each other's arms, in a world where only their souls could hear the symphony they created together. In the hallowed halls of Ashwood Manor, their love bloomed like a forbidden flower, nurtured by stolen moments and whispered promises. However, the specter of Theodore loomed large, a constant reminder of the engagement that society demanded be fulfilled. He was everything her parents had hoped for, a wealthy landowner with a lineage as impeccable as their own. Yet with each passing interaction, Clara felt her resolve to marry him slipping away like sand through her fingers. His manners were impeccable, his lineage impeccable, his status impeccable. But his soul, his very being, was a stranger to her, separated from her by a chasm that neither wealth nor status could bridge. One afternoon, as Theodore visited Ashwood Manor to finalize arrangements for the upcoming wedding, he found Clara in the garden. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, painting dappled patterns on her hair and skin. She was beautiful, he thought, more beautiful than he had imagined. But as he reached for her hand, a coldness swept through her eyes, a revulsion that mirrored the disdain in his own heart for this charade they were perpetuating. "Clara," he began, his voice echoing the emptiness he felt within, "we must discuss our impending marriage." Clara drew back, her voice trembling slightly. "Theodore, The words caught in her throat, refusing to form the lie that would bind their fates. In that charged silence, Theodore saw not love, but fear. He saw not devotion, but dread. And in that moment, he understood that Clara's heart belonged elsewhere. As days turned into weeks, the weight of Clara's unspoken feelings grew heavier, pressing down on her chest like a stone. Each stolen glance with Evelyn, each whispered conversation under the cloak of night deepened the turmoil within her. She was engaged to a man she did not love, a man who could never understand the depths of her soul. And with each passing moment, the thought of consummating her marriage to him seemed less like a union of hearts and more like a betrayal of her very being. Then came the fateful night when Theodore, driven by a desperate hope to awaken Clara's affection, invited her for a moonlit stroll in the gardens. The moon hung heavy in the velvet sky, casting an ethereal glow on the manicured lawns and perfectly trimmed hedges. It was a picture of romance, yet the scene was tainted by Clara's lack of feeling. As they walked, Theodore spoke of their future, of children playing in the halls of his manor, of family gatherings and social obligations. With each word, Clara felt her resolve crumbling like ancient ruins, unable to withstand the relentless march of time. It was during this agonizing walk that Theodore made his move, reaching for Clara with a fervor born of desperation rather than love. But instead of reciprocating, she flinched, her heart breaking at the prospect of betraying Evelyn with even a hint of physical contact with another man. Theodore, sensing the depth of her aversion, faltered. His touch, which moments ago had been possessive, now trembled with uncertainty. He had prided himself on his ability to navigate the complexities of courtship, but with Clara, he was lost in a labyrinth of her own making. As they returned to the manor in silence, both lost in their thoughts, the weight of their unspoken truths pressed down upon them. Clara retreated to her room, seeking solace in the darkness, where tears flowed freely, mingling with her whispered apologies to Evelyn. How could she have been so blind? How could she have allowed her family, her society, to push her toward a life that felt like a slow, agonizing death? Meanwhile, in a different corner of the manor, Evelyn paced her room, her heart mirroring Clara's turmoil. She had sensed the growing unease in Clara's demeanor, the haunted look in her eyes, and her own intuition told her that Theodore was at the center of it all. In the hushed quiet of the early morning, Clara rose with a newfound determination. She would not let societal pressures dictate her life, her love, her happiness. Today, she decided, she would confront her reality. As the sun began its ascent, casting tentative rays of light into the manor's grand hall, Clara made her way toward the drawing room where she knew Evelyn would be tutoring her younger cousins. The grand hall seemed to stretch endlessly, its high ceilings pressing down on her with the weight of expectations. But with each step, her resolve grew, fueled by the love that waited for her at the end of that hall. Upon seeing Clara enter, Evelyn's eyes widened, quickly masking her surprise. She stood, her movements fluid, her smile warm as she greeted Clara. "Good morning, Clara." In that moment, the world outside the drawing room ceased to exist. There was just Clara and Evelyn, two souls bound by a love that defied convention, two hearts that beat in unison, whispering a silent symphony of devotion. As the day wore on, their whispers grew, carrying the weight of their unspoken feelings, the dreams they dared not voice aloud. Then, as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the room, Clara took a deep breath and spoke the words that had been echoing in her heart for weeks. "Evelyn, I am to be married to Theodore Hawthorne." The words hung in the air, heavy with the implication that their time might be running out. The grand halls of Ashwood Manor echoed with the finality of Clara's announcement. The engagement that had been the talk of the social season was now a reality that loomed over their love like a funeral shroud. With each passing hour, the weight of Theodore's impending arrival pressed down on Clara, intensifying her longing for a life with Evelyn. Stolen moments became precious commodities, shared glances held unspoken promises, and whispered conversations in the dead of night were seasoned with the bittersweet taste of longing. Theirs was a love story written in the margins, a testament to the resilience of the heart, yet tinged with the melancholy of a requiem. As the wedding day dawned, Clara woke with a heart heavy with sorrow. The room seemed to mock her with its finery, the silk curtains, the ornate canopy, all symbols of a life she was about to enter into, a life devoid of Evelyn. The wedding ceremony was a blur. Toasts were made, congratulations offered, and vows exchanged. But all Clara could think about was the empty space beside her, the phantom touch of Evelyn's hand in hers. In the quiet of her room that night, surrounded by the trappings of her new life, Clara wept. Her tears mingled with the perfumed waters of her bridal bouquet, creating a somber symphony of heartbreak. The world celebrated Clara's engagement to Theodore Hawthorne. To be wed to him meant financial security for her family and social standing that shone brighter than gold. But in the gilded cage of her new life, Clara found solace only in the memories of stolen moments and whispered promises with Evelyn.